Good day to everyone. It's a pleasure being here with all my colleagues from across the island. Milton's presentation really set the backdrop in terms of outlining those international conventions and regional policies and protocols that inform the development of our national level legislative framework. I wish to acknowledge my contributing authors, especially Attorney Najla King, who was very instrumental in the drafting process. So in the next 7 minutes or so, I'm going to share our experience with you. Quite a collaborative experience in terms of how we went about drafting these instructions for being formalized into law. We're going to look at the drafting process, explore the suite, speak to the next steps, as well as the future work that will result as a part of the new regulatory framework that we have for the Barbados fisheries. Now, of course, many of you know how important fishing is to Barbados and the culture here. We're known as the land of the flying fish. Flying fish is on our dollar coin. It's a big part of our livelihoods. I think any mural you pass or art is inspired by a fishing boat or just the market culture. And we know how important something like this is to us. And this is really the impetus behind managing and sustainably developing the fishery sector of Barbados. So back in 2018, really, the Ministry of Maritime Affairs and Blue Economy was established. And just a year after that, there was a legislative reform process which commenced that looked at the existing Fisheries Act 1993, Cap 391, looked at the gaps. It looked at the current situation in the fishery in Barbados, what were the main issues. There was some assessment too as it relates to all of those international conventions, treaties, protocols at the international and regional level. And it was then that the process began in terms of developing these drafting instructions for a very comprehensive suite. 1993, of course, is quite a long time ago, and we knew that it was time for the Fisheries Act to be updated. We did start the process back in before 2021. Actually, cabinet approval was made October 21 for new fisheries management regulations, and we hope that once this is approved before the end of September, that will be under the Fisheries Act 1993. But once this new suite is formalized, then it will be subsumed under the new suite. We should also speak towards how the sustainable fisheries management and development laws and how it's an integral part of the Barbados Blue Economy legislative framework. And, all of these acts illustrated here on the figure are at different levels of development, but you can see that in Barbados, we have embarked on a very comprehensive development of a blue economy legislative framework, from the Maritime and Underwater Heritage Act to a suite of laws for seaports. There's Marine Plastics Pollutions Prevention and Control Act as well. And we see the blue economy here with the several sectors featured. More importantly, we look at the merchant shipping suite of laws that have interactions with the fisheries management and development suite of laws as well, and some research and development starting to feed into the Sargassum Management Act. So we can see, well, I have illustrated here to be very central, but we see all of the overlaps and the synergies between all of the other pieces of legislation that are finalized and being developed to promote blue economy development in Barbados. So back then in 2019, Attorney Najla King started the process with the Fisheries Division to develop this suite of laws. Since then, there have been consultations with many stakeholders along the fisheries value chain. And after those consultations, there was revisions made to the drafting instructions before the cabinet paper was developed. After the paper was developed, our minister then presented it in cabinet, and approval was granted on the 18th of May this year. And just a month after, we also went to cabinet with a policy framework for aquaculture and mariculture and the aquaculture and maricultural regulations, and they were also approved. So looking at the suite itself, it's two-pronged. Part of the suite addresses the harvest sector. Another section, the sister bill, looks at the post-harvest sector. And under the Sustainable Fisheries Management and Development Act, we have different regulations. We have the FAD regulations, the standards training regulations. We have the Working Fishing Convention regulations. And one of the very innovative and cutting edge type laws was the use of fishing, spa, and beauty services, because we realize this is the way that some of the spas are going in Ireland and in the region. And then, finally in June, where we were able to propose the drafting instructions for aquaculture and mariculture. And these are just a screenshot of the drafting instructions thus far. We do have some vessel regulations that are in progress as well too, which we will have to follow up, and that's addressed in the slide on future work. So just a very brief overview, since I only have 7 minutes, is to give you just a screenshot of the 44 parts of the very comprehensive bill. You would see the usual parts in licensing, permits, boatyard, abandoned and derelict vessels. But you would see new sections of this act. For instance, corporate social responsibility, fisheries, marine spatial planning and management, for instance, transshipment of fish, one of my favorites, seafood traceability and fraud prevention. We also look to include sea moss cultivation, since we have embarked on a sea moss project in Barbados. And then the Act also has these sections that look towards intersectoral collaborations, how fisheries interacts with energy, as well as fisheries and tourism. And I think what's very key is, how we have been contributing into training over the years, and the fact that under this Act, will propel the development of the Barbados Institute for Fisheries and Fisheries-related Studies. So exploring the sister bill now, there are 2 sets of regulations, one for seafood markets and seafood products. And these regulations, again, are quite interesting. Some of them look at having a seafood supply chain traceability certificate. And this is the impetus behind us exploring the need for a seafood inspectorate at the division. And this will be in our fit for purpose organizational restructuring that we are embarking on. And these are the specific parts. Now, I know I'm beyond time, so I'm just going to quickly outline what the next steps are. The Chief Parliamentary Council formalizes the law. They're due to give us a first draft at the end of September. From there, we have to go back out to town hall meetings and consultations, develop another cabinet paper before the suite is laid in Parliament. We're working with a very ambitious timeline to the end of the year, but I am confident that our team will be able to pull this off, especially as it relates to the Prime Minister's interest in finalizing the aquaculture and mariculture regulations in due course. Now, future work. I spoke towards the vessel regulations that we still need to finalize. And then we have to sit back and really think about our implementation strategy and action plan to really monitor and control, and our surveillance in, of course, implementing this new licensing system, all of these size limits and everything, knowing the staff limitations that we have at this time. We want to put forward the proposal of a fisheries legal officer. The first act itself is over 300 and something pages, the drafting instructions. So we would know that it would take some time to even try to create more regulations for this act. So we would need somebody dedicated to that. We want to develop an updated National Fisheries Management Plan and an aquaculture and mariculture plan, because there are some looming investments and priorities and political will in the development of aquaculture and mariculture. And then we will, there are some drafts of some species specific plans, but we really want to finalize those and our FAD management plan. And of course, it's very important that out of all of this, that we develop a strategy, a communication strategy and plan to increase public awareness, not only with our sectors, but the general public at large and our colleagues in the region and at the international level. So this is really the end of the presentation. I want to thank you for your attention. Any questions?
Thank you for the presentation. In the interest of time, once again, I will allow one question here by Gregory Kong.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. I just wondered, many of the legal frameworks related to fisheries and aquaculture focuses on fisheries management and development. And we see the growing recognition of the link between fisheries and various crimes throughout the value chain, ranging from money laundering, human trafficking, illegal arms, narcotics, and just to name a few. Has there been any initiative that looks at a framework, both legal and institutional, that provides coordination and cooperation that seeks to address this critical issue of fisheries crime?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, Gregory, because that was a big part of Christopher Parker, our Deputy Chief Fisheries Officer. He wanted to ensure that a big part of the regulations was to address fraudulent businesses. So part of the regulation sets out the need for the business to be registered and a few protocols that the business will have to set up in order for it to be able to be given the opportunity to set up the business. I could speak to it, at length another time, but Chris was very key on that based on lessons learned from previous mariculture operations in Barbados. But I take your point and it's quite valid, and this was something that our team did consider in the development of those regulations for aquaculture and mariculture. And you would see too that we had a fraud prevention as well in our larger bill. There was a section on seafood traceability and fraud prevention.